which is chapter 4, who is also a coalition against torture member, also to explain the kind of services they have for survivors of torture.
Today we brought the guide to the anti-money laundering law to guide civil society organizations, to try to simplify the law so that they can understand the obligation under the law and to avoid any challenges that we may face ahead of conducting the activities. Yeah, but for the victims of torture, we offer free legal aid services, we interact with them, we document the cases. Thank you. You're most welcome. Yes, we can.
Part of our mandate is to advise the public about the rule and put the answer issues that comes out. We issue the reports. So we talk about the social rule of law and country paper. So in some instances, issues of total
law in many courts of law in all our countries. And as a result, we have had some success. We represent, torture is a wide. It has a wide range within families, within the country, political. So we represent all those people to ensure that their rights are upheld. So this man is the best.
Uganda Human Rights Commission is also here exhibiting. You can tell them nothing.
Good morning, everyone. With us here we have materials, or call them IDC materials, where we have flyers that are talking about our duties and responsibilities. We also have some brochures that are also talking about the rights of persons with disabilities.
Because most of us lose our jobs, we can't sustain our livelihoods. So with this intervention of SCTV, this is how survivors of torture came back to their steps, back to our kids, and this is the kind of activities like some of the farming or
these are tomates. So how are they used?
And rehabilitate as to be able to do what many able-bodied people who have not gone through torture are not.
please remain standing for a word of prayer? Father, Lord Jesus, we want to thank you for today. We want to commit this event to your purview. We want, Father, that you take charge of it and guide us in everything we're going to discuss. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Assalamu alaikum. Can you take your seats?
I've been the Inspector General of Police. I've been reliably informed that he has been represented. The Chief Executive Officer, African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, Mr. Subuga Albert Samuel. You're welcome to Nkuruma. Officers from the Uganda Law Society, Parliament of Uganda, I think Honorable Fox Odoi, the Danish Institute Against Torture, the representative of the DPP, Justice Francis Abodo, and the rest of the distinguished guests. You're most welcome. Foremost, I wish to extend my warm greetings to all the torture victims and the survivors who are currently present on this occasion. And we appreciate all the efforts that have been made towards rehabilitating them. And I take this honor to also thank the event organizers for having chosen Nkuruma Zone to be the host zone or the host village for this United Nations Day for torture victims. Furthermore, as a symbol of remark, the area LOC office has provided a tree that will be planted in commemoration of this event. So the chief guest, I request the organizers to inform the chief guest that we have a tree, and they will single the location behind here where that tree is going to be planted. So please, Madam MC, take charge of that. So with those few remarks, I declare the event open for God and my country.
I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims. I'm also the chairperson of the Coalition Against Torture. The chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and guest of honor, Ms. Maria Mwangadia, the President of Uganda Law Society, Council Bernard Oundo, commissioners of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, representatives of our development partners, representatives of ministries, departments and agencies, survivors of torture, fellow members of the Coalition Against Torture, civil society organizations here present, the media, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. You are all welcome to this commemoration of the United Nations Day in support of survivors of torture. Thank you very much for sparing your morning to be with us here. My remarks will more or less re-echo the vote of thanks made by previous speakers. I would like to thank our development partners in general, but in particular the United States Agency for International Development, from the American people, and the Danish Institute Against Torture, Dignity, which have made this event possible. And we are not only commemorating here, but we are also commemorating in Kabong and in Gulu. I would like to thank our partners, especially those who have been exhibiting the Uganda Law Society, Chapter 4 Uganda Justice Centers, the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and most importantly, the survivors of torture. Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to invite our board member of the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims to give some remarks. He's Reverend Canon Augustine Musiufu Magala. From, of course, his title, you know what he is, the Reverend Canon, but he's also an advocate, the High Court of Uganda, and all other courts here under. Please welcome Reverend Canon Musiufu Magala.
God is good, and all the time. My name has been already mentioned, Reverend Canon Augustine Musiufu Magala. I'm a member of SCTV, standing in for our chairman, Honorable Livingston Okelo, who has not been able to be with us this morning, but who sends warm greetings to you. This is what he would have said if he was here. The guest of honor, representatives from diplomatic missions, representatives from ministries, departments, and agencies, the National Human Rights Institution, intergovernmental organizations, the Coalition Against Torture in Uganda, CSOs, NGOs, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Good morning to you all. I take this singular honor to once again thank those who attended the 30th anniversary of SCTV, Rebuilding Lives of Torture Survivors in Uganda, that is on 12th April at Serena Hotel in Kampala. We intend to build a home for SCTV. On behalf of the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, SCTV, we sincerely appreciate your commitment to fighting anti-torture causes through advocacy, awareness, lobbying, and partnership towards a torture-free Uganda. This 26 June 24 commemoration comes at a time when Uganda is up for a mid-term review of human rights at the United Nations under the Universal Periodic Review Mechanism in Geneva. We applaud Uganda for ratifying a number of instruments, including the United Nations Convention Against Torture, UNCAT. We welcome Uganda's National Development Plan 3, since it is in line with the realization of Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs 3 and 16. We are left with only 6 years to assess our progress in implementation and realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, (2030), of which SDG 3 on good health and well-being and SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions are critical in torture prevention and response. The enjoyment of the right to freedom from torture and cruel treatment is essential for a productive and self-reliant economy in pursuance of the global agenda. Leave no one behind. We extend our appreciation to our implementation partners who constitute the Coalition Against Torture in Uganda. Our strategic partner, the Uganda Human Rights Commission, Uganda Law Society, and others for their active role towards a successful UN Day in support of torture victims commemoration in Kampala, Gabon, Karamoja sub-region, and in Gulu City. We are resolute in contributing towards torture prevention and accountability and enhancing the citizenry agency to demand access to justice from relevant institutions in Uganda for torture suffered. This year's UN Day has been commemorated under the local theme, Torture-Free Communities for All by All. It is a theme which resonates with the setup of the main event today and relatedly in Kabong in the Karamoja sub-region and Gulu district. Specialized care and support should be accessible to all by all. SCTV would like to add its voice and message of solidarity, hope and restoring of lives of victims and survivors of torture and their families who are secondary survivors. Torture must stop and be seen to be prohibited by the duty bearers. I want to repeat that. Torture must stop. Torture must what? Must stop. Must stop and be seen to be prohibited by the duty bearers. We encourage communities to refrain from acts of violent extremism, mob violence, or action which results into a number of human rights abuses, including torture, ill treatment, among others. N'abo abali mu lutobazi, nabo mbagasseeko. Torture remains prevalent, and the number of violated or abused human rights and freedom in Uganda, as reported by SCTV and the Uganda Human Rights Commission, but access to justice in terms of criminal prosecution of perpetrators, timely access to specialized care, and actual receipt of compensatory awards remain a huge challenge. Glaring gaps remain in effective documentation and investigation by state institutions and requires joint effort between state and non-state actors to address negative perception and attitude due to suspicion by both duty bearers and rights holders, stigma among the survivors, and ignorance from the public about the response mechanisms and how they relate, and law or no criminal prosecution of public officials before mainstream courts of law for torture-related allegations which persist. We therefore propose for concerted efforts between state actors and civil society to consider the enactment of the Witness Protection Bill 2015 to enable the public report all cases of torture and ill treatment, and the National Legal Aid Bill. Ratification of the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture will improve the human rights situation in all places of detention. The criminal justice institutions should consider operationalizing the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Regulation 2017 to improve documentation and investigation of torture-related complaints. We conclude by reiterating the call to the need for tolerance, inclusiveness, and concerted efforts towards torture-free communities in the fishing sector, oil sector, environmental sector, and in the expression of opinion, association, and assembly in Uganda. SCTV remains open to dialogue and engagements for accountable institutions. Allow me to wish you all a meaningful International Day in support of victims and survivors of torture today, 26 June 2024. God bless you.
The chairperson, Uganda Human Rights Commission, the commissioners of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, the executive director, African Center for the Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, the president, Uganda Law Society, the representatives of government agencies represented here, development partners, the Coalition Against Torture, members of the public, the press, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning once again. I greet you in the name of our God. My name is Barbara Kauma Bugembe. I'm standing here representing the Director of Public Prosecutions, who was supposed to be here, but due to other engagements, she could not make it here. I would request that you allow me read her remarks on her behalf. Verbatim, I'll read them verbatim. On my own behalf and that of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, I wish to commend the Uganda Human Rights Commission, the African Center for the Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, USAID, Danish Institute Against Torture, for organizing this event to commemorate the International Day Against Torture. The theme for this year's event is Torture-Free Communities for All and by All. This theme speaks to all of us here, from the highest office in the land to the lowest communities, where we all come from. We all have somewhere that we come from, so irrespective of our capacities. Torture, as we all know, is a grave violation of human rights, and it's a crime against humanity. So as we reflect on the significance of this day and the theme, as stated earlier, we must assess our contribution towards our government's compliance with its treaty obligations, particularly to uphold, protect the inherent dignity and rights of individuals. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions plays a crucial role in ensuring the proper functioning and administration of criminal justice system in Uganda. As we all, I believe, are aware, the 1995 Constitution of Uganda mandates the DPP to direct and control criminal investigations on behalf of the public, on behalf of the members of the public, on behalf of the survivors of torture. And the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act is among the several laws that enjoins the DPP to prosecute offenders, including perpetrators of torture. As the Office of the DPP, we have put in place mechanisms, or tried to establish mechanisms that can help us effectively prosecute cases of torture. For one, we have a unit that specifically handles or coordinates the investigation and prosecution of cases of human rights violations involving torture. We have also collaborated with a number of agencies here, Uganda Human Rights Commission for one, the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, and developed, for example, a checklist for investigators and prosecutors to guide them on conducting effective investigations and pick out evidence that will be sufficient to sustain charges of torture. However, as we stand here today, we all know that it is all not done, or it is not perfect. As we are here members of the public, we are aware that many torture victims are unaware of their rights and therefore do not report some of these cases to police. And some of the victims of torture expect little or no protection from state agencies. Some of them probably have been tortured by the same state agencies and therefore are reluctant to go and report the same cases to the perpetrators or where the perpetrators were from. We are also aware of the absence of the law on victim protection, and therefore this discourages primary and secondary victims to report these cases of torture. So as we gather here today, we all as stakeholders must play our role. Investigators conduct the investigations, prosecutors conduct the prosecutions, but civil society also send out the message out there. If you receive victims of torture, direct them to the right offices where they can report and therefore be able to seek justice. So we can be seen to be fighting this vice of torture. So the above notwithstanding, we today, as we reflect upon our theme, I think must respectively, in our different institutions and in accordance to our respective mandates, reaffirm our resolve to prevent and prohibit torture in all its forms. And we must undertake to hold perpetrators accountable, provide redress and rehabilitation to survivors. I want to thank you for listening to me. That is on behalf of the Director of Public Prosecutions for God and my country.
The Chairperson, Uganda Human Rights Commission, the representative of the Uganda People's Defense Forces, the representative of the commissioners of the Inspector General of Police, representative of the Electoral Commission, representative of the DPP, invited guests, the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen, a good morning to you. I bring you greetings from the Uganda Law Society, and we are happy to participate on this significant occasion as we commemorate the UN International Day for Victims of Torture. This day is a reminder of the struggles faced by victims of torture and the ongoing efforts required to eradicate such practices from our society, and generally the fight for the protection and promotion of the rule of law. First and foremost, allow me extend my gratitude to the Coalition Against Torture, led by the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, and the Uganda Human Rights Commission. I think we should applaud these two entities. Thank you for the work so far done over the years in fighting to promote a society free from torture, and for your contributions made to the fight for the rule of law in Uganda. I would like to specifically acknowledge your tremendous efforts in advocating for Uganda's ratification of the UN Convention Against Torture, Cruel, Inhuman or Degrading Treatment, and the domestication of the Convention Against Torture. The theme, Torture Communities for All by All, emphasizes the collective responsibility we bear. Torture is not just a problem for the victims and the perpetrators, it is a stain on our entire community. It is a call to action for every one of us to educate, to advocate, and to ensure that our laws are not just words on paper, but living instruments of justice and promotion of human rights and rule of law. Uganda now has a progressive legal and regulatory framework that bars against torture and other inhuman treatment. This includes the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act, the Human Rights Enforcement Act, the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Regulations of 2017. These frameworks provide mechanisms and penalties that offer redress for torture victims and generally promote respect for fundamental human rights. However, according to the Uganda Human Rights Commission's 26th report of 2023, torture ranks highest with 127 cases. Similarly, in 2022, it also ranked highest with 277 cases. We believe that as Uganda Law Society, we must address the root causes of torture or that perpetuate torture. We have argued in other fora that the freedom from torture cannot be separated from the other rights. If we are going to have a torture-free community, we must ensure that the other rights are also progressively respected. And I'll give you a simple example. If we don't have the right to ensure that people are held in gazetted places, because there seems to be a connection with people being held in ungazetted places and their infringement on the right to freedom from torture. So these important rights, like the right to be held in a gazetted place, is important for you to be able to progress freedom of torture. So as Uganda Law Society, we continue to appeal to the government, to the stakeholders that are here, that we must be able to respect the other fundamental rights under Chapter 4 of the Constitution, because those rights have a bearing on freedom for torture. In addition, we join all the other stakeholders who are advocating for the passing of the National Legal Aid Bill. As you are aware, the Uganda Law Society is the biggest legal aid services provider in the country. And this enhances access to justice, particularly for the indigent, vulnerable, and marginalized persons. We also join the other stakeholders who are pushing for the witness protection bill. It's important also that that is passed, and we urge the Parliament to quickly consider it, because torture is not only an obligation on the tortured victim, it's also an obligation on any one of us who suspects that there is torture. So it's important, if you're going to have a torture-free community, to ensure that the witnesses who come to report are protected. And therefore, as I conclude, I call upon every one of us here to join the fight against torture and to pledge to condemn torture in all its forms, to support its victims, and to work tirelessly to eradicate this practice from our society. Let us build a Uganda where every individual is treated with respect and dignity, where justice prevails, and where the rule of law is upheld without any compromise. I thank you again for inviting the Uganda Law Society, and I continue to thank all the stakeholders that are contributing to the fight against torture. Thank you, for God and my country.
My name is Robert Mugisa Aboli, and through the Coalition Against Torture, the song was composed to advocate against torture. I want to invite the coalition members to join in, please. Coalition members, let's come and perform together.
The other day I was walking on the street, I saw a young man being beaten up. His hands were tied up, his head twisted. We want information, that's all he said. I don't know anything, that's what he said. I don't know anything, please, that's what he said. Come on, come on, come on. Let's fight torture in Uganda and the rest of the world. Let's fight torture in Uganda and the rest of the world. Tukwatire wamu, tulwanyisa okutulugunyizibwa mu nsi yaffe. Tukwatire wamu, tulwanyisa okutulugunyizibwa mu nsi eno. Chairperson, Uganda Human Rights Commission. My brother, my sister, my father, my mother, my leader, employer, and everybody else. Torture is so cruel, it is degrading. Torture is inhuman, it is a crime. Let's stand together no matter who we are. Let's stand together, Let's fight and fight until we overcome. My brother, my sister, my father, my mother, my leader, employer, and everybody else. Torture is so cruel, it is degrading. Torture is inhuman, it is a crime. Let's stand together no matter who we are. Let's fight and fight until we overcome. Let's fight torture in Uganda and the rest of the world. Let's fight torture in Uganda and the rest of the world. Tukwatire wamu, tulwanyisa okutulugunyizibwa mu nsi yaffe. Mr. Herbert Nsumuga, Uncle Crispin Kaheru, Uganda Law Society, tukwatire wamu, Let's fight torture, guys. Women, let's fight together. Tukwatire wamu, tulwanyisa okutulugunyizibwa mu nsi yaffe. Uganda, tukwatire wamu, tulwanyisa okutulugunyizibwa mu nsi eno. Uganda, our motherland, the pearl of Africa. Celebrate together for God and my country.
The national coordinator for Torture Survivors in Uganda. The guest of honor, Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission, Cabinet Minister present, all officials of the government agents at all levels, heads of civil society organizations and staff, all dignitaries present, invited guests, members of Torture Survivors Association Uganda, ladies and gentlemen. Torture Survivors Association Uganda, since its inception in the year 25, year to year, we have been participating in this commemoration day of UN activity in the commemoration of torture victims the world over. For us, the word torture victim is too generalized to describe us. The correct word that best describes us is torture survivors. Meaning, we have survived death by not succumbing to the grave torture experience that has reflected on our bodies. Not to mention mental torture. Today, the narrative of torture has become a commonplace, political, and we as torture survivors feel that more strategies need to be thought about to enhance effectiveness, decisiveness, to consent effort of fighting torture in society by both mindful individuals, state, non-state actors, and goals and goals of rehabilitation of torture. Today, therefore, as to serve, we may not need to cite the law concerning the concept of human rights torture because they have been repeatedly cited and recited at every opportunity of discussing in different stakeholders. Since it is our day, we courageously want to highlight the following concerns. Number one, the concept of rehabilitation of torture survivors. The concept of torture rehabilitation to survivors needs to be reconsidered, including socio-economic aspects of survivors of torture. Conventionally, survivors of torture have been helped and managed by some giving organizations that are who are members of Coalition Against Torture in Uganda. In this regard, we salute African Center of Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, ACTV, which has been in the forefront to provide what they term holistic treatment. The largest percentage of our members were indeed in bad shape. We came as clients to ACTV as early as 2004. For the old clients, we have been treated. Medical reports were issued and used in legislation in Uganda Human Rights Commission Tribunal. We propose that service-giving organization to the survivors of torture would include component of social and economic rehabilitation for the survivors who have lost their employment of disability as a result of torture and social stigma, especially those faces political motivated torture who could not be redeployed. We could not and still have no fed for ourselves and the families of our children who have dropped out of school. Point number two, denied justice for the survivors and victims of torture. Being remembered that justice delayed is justice denied. Survivors of torture have been conditionally seeking justice at the Uganda Human Rights Commission over the years. Not that they felt the tribunal were not faster or yielding to their expectations, but actually the opposite. When it comes to expediting their complaints files, the issue of awarding the compensation, if the files were not continued for a lack of sufficient evidence. Actually, Uganda Human Rights Commission had the tradition of awarding mega, mean and just compensation. Not equivalent to what they had gone through. Tradition of not equivalent to what they had gone through. To that grave attitude of torture meted on their victims. The view has been forwarded by our members. We are not satisfied with the outcome of the mega compensation they always give to our victims. The survivors complained, no option for choice because they could not and they still at the present cannot afford lawyers in private practice to carry out litigation and present them in the mainstream court of law, which are not offer just and commensurate compensation award. The issue of case logs in Uganda Human Rights Commission has been exorbitant, long-lasting occurrence. Some of our members failed stayed and have stayed for over 5 to 15 years until someone lost interest or died before the tribunal dispatches them off or make a ruling. Now, to solve proposals as follows. The Parliament enhanced Human Rights Commission budget to have enough commissioners to be appointed as tribunals. The commissioners have been competent and impartial. Objects are just and not unjust, especially when it determines the compensation award, but not behaving as cadres instead of being sympathetic of the complainers, but they instead sympathize with the government, who is the defendant. The Parliament enacted into law the National Legal Aid Bill so that the poor persons and the vulnerable survivors, victims of torture may have the opportunity to have lawyers in private practice, present them in the mainstream court of law on pro bono services. This also is the pressure on case law at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Point number 3, delay compensation afterward. When the common knowledge is that compensation award to a torture or to a victim is meant to rehabilitate him or her in respect to the full-scale treatment that can enable the person to a great extent restore his or her original health status, even if the person so compensated was disability or male to a result of torture. The money given to the person should help him to get clutches, artificial lips, and also have a livelihood to starting a small business, family, and manage certain their lives.
Rights Commission, the representative of the Uganda People's Defense Force, the representative of the Inspector General of Police, commissioners of the Human Rights Commission, the Fourth Estate, all dignitaries in your respective capacities, all protocol. I bring you greetings from the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Justice Simon Byabakama, who had hoped to be present but could not due to other earlier scheduled engagements, and so asked me to represent him in the commission. The Electoral Commission is pleased to join you all on the commemoration of the UN Day in support of torture survivors. The theme of this commemoration, torture-free communities for all and by all, is timely and relevant. It emphasizes that each one of us has a role to play to ensure that no one suffers torture of any kind, be it our homes, workplaces, or while undertaking any activities. It is for this reason, for example, that Electoral Commission emphasizes the need to promote a peaceful and violence-free electoral process as we head towards 2025-2026 general elections. It's also on this note that we call upon the Human Rights Commission to vehemently embark on a deliberate mass civic education, because
Civic education is vital for every country. It promotes democratic values. Constitutionally, human rights were charged with civic education, and the Electoral Commission calls upon you to begin as early as possible as we head towards 2026 general elections. Civic education promotes democratic values. Civic education helps citizens understand democratic principles, human rights, and the rule of law. It helps in building stable democracies. It helps in promoting human rights, reducing poverty and inequality, empowering marginalized communities, and fostering sustainable development. By prioritizing civic education, we can lay the foundation for a more informed and engaged, prosperous citizenry. May our collective voice be a beacon of hope for those who have suffered, and may we work together towards a future where all people are treated with dignity and respect. We need to nurture a culture of respect for each other, be law-abiding citizens, treat others as we would like to be treated, and value, respect, and observe all human rights in order to have torture-free communities. Let us continue to stand together against torture and oppression in all its forms. I wish you fruitful commemorations. Thank you, the participants. Thank you, Prisons Band. Your interlude was very calming. Thank you, everybody, for God and my country.
Chief of Defense Forces, representative of the Inspector General of Police. Is police represented by anyone? The representative of the Director Public Prosecutions, ADPP, Barbara Kauma. The representative of the Chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Honorable Commissioner Caroline Baina Mario. Members of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, who I request to stand up briefly for recognition. The President of the Uganda Law Society, Mr. Bernard Oundo, and congratulations on your election. Our partner, the CEO of SCTV, Mr. Samuel Subuga, representatives of all partner organizations and MDAs with whom we have organized this day, representatives of civil society organizations, and in a special way, the staff of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Please stand up for recognition. The area chairperson, LC1, and the prisons band, you are beyond excellent. Members of the media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to welcome you back to these railways rounds for the first time after 4 years. It is also the first time in many years that we have held a commemorative procession like we used to do in the past. So I think we need to congratulate ourselves with a clap. Today we are here to affirm that it is possible to have torture-free communities for all, as the theme for this year's commemoration goes. It is also possible for all of us here to individually resolve and commit towards refraining from taking part in anything that causes physical or emotional pain to fellow human beings in our communities always remembering that the right to protection from torture is an absolute right under Article 44A of the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, the profound purpose for this year's commemoration of the UN Day in support of torture victims is to make an annual reflection on the progress made by both state and non-state actors towards the prevention of torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Torture is prevalent in our homes and the communities. We have had instances where children are subjected to severe beatings, disguised as punishment. Housemates are denied food or have their meager earnings deducted over small mistakes in the course of performance of their duties in their homes. Border riders and fishermen being stripped naked and bathed in the open because the society thinks they don't want to bathe. Husbands or wives neglecting their duty to provide or care for their children. We have seen women being publicly flogged by their husbands for alleged adultery, among so many others which go unreported. All these instances cause extreme physical pain, mental anguish, and humiliation, and greatly impact one's human dignity and self-worth. It is sad to note that a big part of our society has normalized cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. And that's why some of the perpetrators are proud to capture on video as they torment others, as they torture and humiliate their victims. That is why many will justify mob action for theft, caning, and other corporal punishment in their homes, schools, among others. We want to call upon all the people of Uganda, parents, leaders, stakeholders in law enforcement and the law and justice sector to take a zero-tolerance stand against torture in all its forms. Long after the scars of torture have healed, the emotional pain persists. We at the Uganda Human Rights Commission have experienced firsthand as complainants give their testimonies before our court and shed tears as they relieve the pain from many years ago. It affirms our conviction that torture has no place in a civilized and democratic society. Let each one of us play their role in combating torture. Torture is a crime. Every citizen should instantly report to police cases of torture as they occur in their vicinities. At this point, we want to appreciate the Uganda Police Force for always swiftly intervening in cases of torture in their communities by arresting culprits and arraigning them in court and rescuing the victims. Often I have shared with the police grim videos of torture, those hard-to-watch videos, and within hours I get feedback that the perpetrators have been picked up and are awaiting trial. As I end, I extend my appreciation to our partners, the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, the USAID, and the Danish Development Corporation, Dignity, for the enormous logistical, technical, and moral support towards today's commemoration. Without you, we would not have had such a colorful event. And we want to thank you, Prisons Band, for the wonderful music. You've entertained us, and we are very, very, as a Ugandan, I'm very proud of the Uganda Prisons Band. We want to appreciate the Uganda Law Society and the Justice Centers for spearheading the Pro Bono Legal Clinic and other partner organizations under the Coalition Against Torture, like the Torture Survivors Association. Torture Survivors Association, we've heard your message today, and we take it very serious. We want to congratulate you that you have managed to heal, at least physically, and we pray that along the way you fully recover emotionally. We want to appreciate what you have been able to do so far. Looking at your stall today, I asked myself, I thought about there's so many people who have never had any experience similar to what you've gone through, who are not able to do what you are able to do. So that's wonderful. I also want to appreciate the ACTV for the role you played in rehabilitating and healing survivors of torture. We want to appreciate our partners, Human Rights Center Uganda, Chapter 4, Agriculture Reform Hub Uganda, Women Human Rights Defenders Uganda, among others. As I end, I also wish to thank unreservedly members of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, staff of the Uganda Human Rights Commission for attending this event in large numbers and for your technical support and energy to make this commemoration a success. I thank you, and I have been asked by Mr. Nsubuga to formally declare this event closed, but please do not go away. The exhibitions continue. For God and my country.
The invitation and for being part of this commemoration of 2024.
Excuse us, please.
Let's fight for time,
An recognition that we all have to protect our environment, but also to make a mark that we... thank you so much for coming. We want to thank the Uganda Police Force. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for leading us into the marching. Thank you so much to the Uganda Prison Force, Uganda Prison Service for being with us, and also the band. Thank you, the media that have honored this day.
We came when we tortured mentally, so we lose hope, nothing to do. We have seen like it is the end of life. Like when we come near ACTV, they treat us first, and then after they after being tortured. After all of that, you can stand up. It is the end of the life. It is not the end of the life. You can stand up, you can make it, and you be good. CTV. So after treating me, we got some training, like such tailoring, and from that tailoring, counseling, what now we got healed mentally, and we stood up. And now we can do what you are seeing here. We can make clothes, we can take care of our families, so we can make things, we can do business. All of that is because ACTV shows us that after being torturing is not the end. You can be good, you can do it again. They put in us hope. We thank God for it, and we thank God for ACTV, and let God bless them. Let them continue doing what they did for us. Let them do it for others, counseling them, put them hope, give them training. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Grace Namatovu, and I work with the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims. I work as a M&E manager. So here, ACTV, our mandate is we provide treatment and rehabilitation to survivors of torture and violence in Uganda, but also we advocate against these acts of torture. So today we are commemorating the UN Day in support of torture survivors, and right here on this table we are just exhibiting some of the information and communication materials that we use mainly to create awareness about torture, but also create awareness about the available rehabilitation services for survivors of torture.
I'm Anek Pola from Kamuli, Women Human Rights Defender Network, Uganda. As Women Human Rights Defenders Network, Uganda, we offer support and recognize women defenders that are at risk in trying to advocate for gender rights. And we also offer and keep up education support for women human rights defenders at risk, and also give monthly stipends for women human rights defenders who are being abandoned by their partners for doing the work that they do. Usually as women rights defenders, or when we are defending the rights of others, we don't have people who defend us. But the network, as Women Rights Defenders Network Uganda, it defends the defenders. So it also offers legal support, offer housing support services, enable women human rights defenders to have self-care by facilitating them to go to their facilitation-funded areas like in Naivasha, Kenya, so that they can feel self-care. And also And also, they also support women human rights defenders to go to New York, like for Commission on the Status of Women, so that they can talk more on the issues defenders go through.